Hey, my name's Che Knight. I'm with a company called Mountain Fresh Foods, and today I wanted to give you a quick explanation on how the nutritional labels work and how you can actually use these to figure out how much food you have stored for long-term purposes. Because truly, like the term serving has very much been just bastardized into something it's not, and people seem to be confused thinking that's actually a meal or even a portion. Is not. And the 2020 guidelines for FDA labels has actually tried to sort of remedy that by trying to say that the serving has to come in a little bit closer, more lined up with a portion, rather than 5 servings becomes 1 portion. And the idea of this was to keep it where companies were able to go in and they could have a candy bar with 4 servings in it, so it looked like the candy bar was 50 calories, and look closely and it's 250 calories. But let me zoom in here. I'm going to pull this in real close, and I'm going to try to show you on the whiteboard exactly how you can work out the total calories for the foods you have. So this is the new FDA label, and it's got a couple changes on it. One of them being the calories is much larger. So, you're looking at this. This right here is not a candy bar. This is actually off the FDA website. This is a frozen lasagna, I believe it is. But for starters, the calories are larger, and the serving size has to be expressed in a format that is more recognizable to the average consumer. 208 grams, when you're eating a candy bar, it's not like you can sit down and say, I'm going to eat 208 grams. But a cup and a half, like in this particular case here, frozen lasagna, a cup and a half lasagna is something that you pretty much can kind of eyeball and wager a guess of what you're eating. Now, in this particular case, they're saying that it starts out up here, and it says 4 servings per container, which means the whole container will have 4 times whatever the calorie count is here. And that's getting us into the math of how this all works. So the other thing that I wanted to point out, though, before we get started on that, though, is the added sugars. And added sugars, this is something that's kind of important because a lot of survival food is actually loaded with calories, and you really, that are just empty calories from added sugars. You really just don't want to include that because it's not going to be, it's not really soluble by your body in such a way that it's actually going to sustain someone for a day. Otherwise, we'd all be packing up candy bars, and a big pile of candy bars would get you by. But your body just can't do that. So we're going to go over here, and let me just show you a little bit about how the math works on this and how you'd work it out. So for starters, you would take the number of servings, which in this case is 4, and you'd put it right here. And then you would multiply that times the number of calories, which is 240 here. So you got 4 servings times the 240 calories, 960 calories total. But really, because of this new thing they have with the FDA label, you got one more trick you can use. And on this, it's frozen lasagna, so it really doesn't show a big change on that. But what we do is we'd go over here, we'd find, I'm gonna zoom in, hopefully you can kind of see this. Down here, we've got the added sugars. The added sugars in this particular case is 2 grams of the 208. Negligible in what we're doing here, but let me just show you how the math works. You're just going to do standard proportions, and you're going to say, so it would be 206, which is 208 minus the 2 grams equals, that's how many non-sugar grams you have in the package. You took the total 208, pulled out the 2 grams of sugar, and you have 206 grams of actual, just call it useful food in the package. And we're going to take that and divide that by this total number of grams. The units are negligible here because they don't really matter because they're the same. And we're going to figure out, basically, this is going to be 99% of your calories are useful. So if you really want to take it to that next step and really know how much you got, you would take that 960, multiply it times the 99, and come up with the number you came up with. But the whole idea here is that you want to be able to take the total number of calories and work that out so you can figure out how much food you have and how far it can go. Now, the average consumer for a lot of your emergency foods, for an adult, you really want to plan for 2,000 calories a day at least. A child under 10 is about half that, or 1,000 calories. And an adult, especially a male, is going to push that up to actually 3,000 in a lot of cases. A lot of people plan for 2,500 or something for emergency food planning purposes. But your bottom line on this is you have this entire package of frozen lasagna, and if you sit down and eat the whole thing, that's only half of what you would need for your total calories for the day. So when you're sitting down and planning on things, you need to consider that the 4 servings wasn't 4 meals. It was only 240 calories, or somewhere around 10% of what your average Joe is going to need. So you really do need to start thinking about this in a different way and start figuring out calories. Forget the servings. If you have a company that tells you they're going to sell you 3 servings a day, just throw them out. Don't deal with them, because they're trying to deceive you there. But so on this though, this is the math you would do. So if you have packages of rice, it's the same thing. You're doing the same math. It would be 160 typically. And you might have it where you have a big bag is 300 servings. You just multiply that 300 times the 160. Typically there's no added sugar, so that's not a factor. That's your total number of calories. Divide that by 2,000 calories. There's your math for how many days you could actually survive just eating nothing but that one thing. You do want to, of course, mix it up. There's many more factors because you don't want to just eat one thing. But in terms of trying to determine the total amount in your stash, your emergency preparedness foods you have set aside, this is how you're doing the math from the FDA label. So hopefully that's helpful. Post any questions you got on the bottom of the comments, and we'll go from there.